Hello, YouTube. Welcome to my channel, Marriage, Politics, and Sports. Listen, I haven't done one of these in a while, so we're back at this live one. I want to see what she has to say on this press conference. I did not go through it at all. And so, I'm going to just be reacting to it in real time with whatever cocktail knowledge that I have on what she's saying. So, so without further ado, well, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to continue to do these, and I'm going to put some other content on here like I always do. But if you're around early in the day and you want to pop in and just see what the hell she's talking about with this press conference, please do. Just leave a like when you come through, whether you stay for a little while, stay for a second, hit the like button. I appreciate it. If you have a comment, go ahead and do that as well. All right, so what is Karoline Leavitt talking about in this particular press conference? I know DC and some other things are going to be on this list. So let's go see what she's talking about.
You share with so many other residents in the District of Columbia is real. And that's why this president is taking action to address it. To get to the heart of your question, I think it's despicable that Democrats cannot agree that we need more law and order in a city that has been ravaged by violence, crime, murders, property theft. This should be a winning issue for all Americans. I don't understand. It's just anything President Trump does, the Democrats want to disagree with. I think the president would love to work with Democrats on this issue to bring law and order to America's cities, but unfortunately they have failed. And that's why he's taken this historic action to federalize the National Guard. And as you're seeing from last night's numbers, we already have seen success. We are removing violent offenders. We are arresting criminals, and we are removing drugs and firearms off of the streets of the city to make it safer for all of its residents.
Just a very quick follow-up.
Yeah, before he says that follow-up, and I wish you would have said in this open salvo, and I'm surprised also that a lot of the demeanor and the tone of this whole setup is because the mayor is very surprising as a liberal Black woman, part of the woke culture. And the reason why I say that, and I know that, is because the first thing she did was hire a lesbian as a police chief over all the men that could be qualified. So she's one of them too. And I don't necessarily trust any women, liberals, in these positions because they're weak on crime. They're just part of the whole woke mob. Everything everything is done based on how people feel about it and shit. And that's why she lost the city. She could have been tough, but she wasn't. There's no way I would have accepted this no cash bail bullshit and all that stuff. But her demeanor, every time I see her in front of a mic, whether she believes it or not, she's like the antithesis of a ratchet person like Jasmine Crockett, for example. Suppose she was like Jasmine Crockett, or Mayor Bass, Nero is fiddling bass. You know what I'm saying? So she needs to get some credit because her demeanor goes a long way with how the troops and everybody underneath her will follow and cooperate with the federal law enforcement, even though they don't have no choice. She's got to get a little bit of credit for that. That's all I want to say.
To that, given the heroic actions of a member of this administration just a few blocks from this building, will the president consider giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Big Balls?
I haven't spoken to him about that, but perhaps it's something he would consider. I'll ask him and get back to you, Benny. Thanks for being here. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. Regarding the President Trump summit on Friday, why not invite Ukrainian President Zelensky to that summit? I know the president said yesterday that he planned to speak with him right after the summit and even before, but why not invite Zelensky? And whose decision was it to not invite him? Was it the president or was it President Putin?
Well, this meeting came about because the president of Russia asked the president of the United States to meet through his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who, as you all know, traveled to Russia to have a conversation with Putin at his request. And so the president is agreeing to this meeting at the request of President Putin. And the goal of this meeting for the president is to walk away with a better understanding of how we can end this war. And the president said at this podium yesterday, when he joined all of you in the room, that he hopes in the future there can be a trilateral meeting with these three leaders to finally bring this conflict to an end. But this administration has really used every lever, has taken every measure to achieve peace through a diplomatic solution. And I think the president of the United States getting in the room with the president of Russia, sitting face to face rather than speaking over the telephone, will give this president the best indication of how to end this war and where this is headed.
Well, she said they use every lever. That's not entirely true, because they're still giving weapons to Ukraine. And even though now they're doing it by proxy, because the European Union or Germany or somebody else is paying for those weapons, we give it to them. They give it to, they pay us for them, I guess, and then they give them to Zelensky. So if that's a change in, it's a change in the way we've been giving them direct weapons directly, but still by proxy. So as long as Zelensky gets the weapons and the money he requires from outside sources, he's never going to give up. And even though with this meeting going on, he was chirping in the news saying that, he's not going to agree to anything they talk about, but because everything he thinks is about him. Putin wanted this meeting so he could tell Trump, for once and for all, I hear you, Trump, but this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And even whether you agree with it or not, you need to, maybe you don't, listen, even if you don't agree, I want you to understand why I'm doing the things I'm doing. And if they might be, definitely something that Putin's going out too. He's no spring chicken. He's an ideologue, he's a killer. He's all that kind of stuff. He does, you just can't tell a guy whose ego is as big as Trump's what to do. That's why Putin stuck Trump in the back a couple of times just for saying, I'm going to stop this war day one. Putin said, no, you're not. No, you're not. And that's what this is about. Putin, Putin is, he's not going to let anybody boss him around, even if they have the upper hand. You ever fought somebody or had an argument with somebody who's clearly wrong or clearly beaten, but, they'd rather you take them out completely than give up? That's Putin. So I think this meeting is going to happen. I don't think this meeting is going to stop anything. Because both Putin and Zelensky don't care how many of their people they kill in order to advance their ideology. Neither one of them. They're both are going to rot in hell when all of this shit is over. So anyway, but I guess you got to go through the motions, and that's where it's at.
On something that happened yesterday, but I wanted to get the White House response. A judge ruled that the grand jury transcripts in Ghislaine Maxwell's case should not be released. What's the White House response to that? And do you plan to appeal? And what do you tell President Trump's supporters who want that information released?
We think that decision is unfortunate. Of course, we moved to unseal that information because the president has said he wants to see credible evidence released. As for the appeal process, I would defer you to the Department of Justice for that. Rachel, thank you so much, Karoline.
Listen, man, you know what? The president, the Republicans, all of these, what the president is doing with Ghislaine Maxwell is such a stupid thing to do. Let that chick rot in the place where she's at. Period. Whether she's she's not the only one compliant, but if you're not bringing people in front of the grand jury and in front of the American people, other than her and Epstein, knowing that there's real victims out there who had been violated by more than just them two, then everything you're talking about is bullshit. Excuse me. Anybody thinking that she should be pardoned? If he pardons her, you could kiss all the rest of this shit goodbye. You pardon that chick, she's already getting better preferential treatment. But the biggest mistake these guys could make, if they actually pardon that woman, the Democrats will rush back in just on that shit alone. Don't blow it. Just don't blow it. Let that bitch rot where she's at. Period. Why are we even talking about her? It's so stupid, man. This is the dumbest shit in the whole world. So, but You know what? No, nobody said that they're going to be mistake free, but this is a mistake.
And we're learning that President Trump spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky. I was curious if you can share any more details about their call, and did Zelensky give President Trump any red lines, any non-starters ahead of this summit on Friday?
Look, I don't want to reveal the private conversations between the president and President Zelensky, but what I can tell you is that the president has deep respect for all parties that are involved in this conflict and are trying to bring this conflict to an end. After Special Envoy Witkoff returned from his meeting with President Putin in Russia, his first phone call was to President Trump. And President Trump's first phone call was to President Zelensky and to our friends in Europe to keep everybody in the loop about where the United States can see moving the ball forward to end this conflict. And so we continue to be very much engaged with President Zelensky and the Ukrainians, but also our allies in Europe as well.
And then just one more for you. How does the president measure success coming out of this meeting? The president at times has suggested that Putin might be tapping him along. Is he prepared to walk out of this meeting if he senses that Putin is not serious about ending this war?
I think I just answered that question for you and what the goal and the expectation of the meeting is. And I won't jump ahead of any hypotheticals, and I'll leave it to the president to speak to all of you after the meeting, which I'm very confident he will.
And he better not rage quit this meeting. He should be anticipating and expecting Putin to act in a certain, I mean, whatever your advisors tell you, A, Putin's going to act like a petulant child. B, Putin's going to act like a prick. C, Putin's going to say, you know what, I'd like to see an end to this. And this is here's my negotiables and here's my non-negotiables. I don't think they're going to get there. I just think that Putin's going to try to get Trump to understand that he's going to keep fighting until everybody in Russia is dead or Ukraine gives up. That's what I think he's going to do. And when I say, I'm exaggerating, of course, but I don't think he cares how many of his own people die or the North Koreans' people. I think North Korea is sacrificing their soldiers, just because for population control. So I'm just telling you, this shit ain't going to be over by this meeting. Is it progress? I don't know, man. They probably need to talk anyway. Right, they maybe they're leaders, right? The president of our country should be talking to the leaders of the other countries anyway, right? They should be talking anyway.
Are you optimistic that a deal will emerge from this meeting, or is he simply going to listen?
I think this is a listening exercise for the president. Look, only one party that's involved in this war is going to be present. And so this is for the president to go and to get, again, a more firm and better understanding of how we can hopefully bring this war to an end.
Karoline, how did you settle on Alaska as the site for this? So there were some other sites being discussed. This is like it was a midpoint between the two leaders?
There were many sites discussed, but of course, Alaska is a state within the United States of America. So the president is very honored and looks forward to hosting President Putin on American soil.
Is there a joint news conference plan, or will the president have a solo one? What sort of scheduling stuff?
Yeah, the mechanics and the scheduling, Steve, are still being ironed out. For Friday, we're working with our Russian counterparts to put those plans into action. And of course, we'll keep you all apprised on the logistical details of Friday as soon as we get them. Charlie?
The president said at the podium yesterday twice that he was planning to go to Russia. Was that a verbal slip-up, or does he actually plan to go to Russia?
Perhaps there are plans in the future to travel to Russia. And on Friday, the president will be meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, as you know. Phil?
Last week, the president said the CEO of Intel was highly conflicted, seeming to cite his past investment with Chinese companies that were doing business with the Chinese military. Yesterday, he called his meeting with that CEO a success. So what can you tell us about what the Intel CEO said to President Trump that changed his mind?
The president put out a statement that you cited, Phil. I will leave it at that. He shared his thoughts on that meeting and how it went. And for any further comment on that, I'll leave it to him to make.
Will the Bureau of Labor Statistics continue to put out monthly jobs reports?
Well, look, what I'll tell you about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I believe that is the plan and that's the hope, and that these monthly reports will be data that the American people can trust. As you know, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has made massive revisions after the last several points reports that they have put out. And there has certainly been a decline in the quality and the reliability of data coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and there's been an increase in revisions. And this president and the administration is finally tackling this problem that so many have talked about, and the president is actually doing something about it. We need to restore new leadership that we can trust. As you know, the president has appointed someone new to take over the BL.
Yeah, see now, what she's saying is could be doublespeak, but nobody's going to believe the numbers until a bad report comes out and they actually report it. Right? We could tell by the previous revisions that the lady who was hired by Biden, they were jiggling with the numbers up and down, so they could get curry favor when the numbers come out and then say when nobody's looking, oh, we had to correct those numbers from the past. That's what they were doing. That's just like the police are doing in every city about crime reports. They're lying. They're jurying. They're fidgeting with the numbers, and that's why in D.C. they don't mention this, but I believe a high-ranking official is on leave because he was fooling around with the numbers. And he got away with it. His own people, the cops, turned his ass in because he's asking them to put shit down that they don't believe in and they know it's not true. So, yeah, she's right. They got to get credibility back. But nobody's going to believe that you guys, the Republicans, are going to be any better than the Democrats when it comes to jurying the goddamn numbers. Until you guys put out a report that actually says, you know what, man, we fucked up this month. Or things are not as good as we hoped this month. And actually let those numbers get out and be put out on a broadcast and take the heat for whatever that might mean. But if every time you guys do it, everything is peachy keen and rosy and the world's going to euphoria, nobody's going to believe your numbers either. I mean, you can't go against human nature. You just can't. You can, but the shit doesn't work long term.
And so we need to look at the means and the methods of how the United States is acquiring this very important data. And all of that is going to be done. And the goal, of course, is to provide honest and good data for the American people to make very important economic decisions on.
Thank you,
Michael.
Thank you, Karoline. Two questions, if I may. The president has talked about land swaps between Russia and Ukraine. Vladimir Putin says he wants Russia to hold on to Russian-occupied territory in eastern Ukraine. Is the White House at all concerned about the messaging that potentially giving over or allowing Russia to maintain its occupied territory in eastern Ukraine, what that might say to other U.S. adversaries like China?
Look, right now, the president of the United States has done more to end this war than his predecessor, Joe Biden, who allowed this war to take place. This war, don't forget, happened at the result of the weakness and the incompetence of the previous administration. And so the president inherited this conflict and he is determined to end it. And it's a very complex and complicated situation. As for the details of the plans that have been kind of tossed back and forth, I won't get into those. And I will let the president of the United States discuss those plans with the president of Russia, with our European allies, and the president of Ukraine, Zelensky himself as well. Sure, go ahead, in the green.
Thank you, Karoline. As far as the policing and security operations, if you speak up, is there a timeline? Do we know what success looks like? Is it going to last longer than 30 days? And also, is there going to be an immigration enforcement aspect to this?
So can you speak up a little bit? The air conditioning is bumping in here for all of you today after yesterday's heater. So we've got to stock up. You're welcome. Go ahead.
Is there a timeline for the security operations here in DC? And also, is there going to be an immigration component to this? And what would that look like?
Look, if law enforcement officers encounter a criminal in this city, and they are an illegal alien, of course, the appropriate measures to detain and deport that individual will be taken, as they should. No city should be a sanctuary for anyone other than law-abiding American citizens, and that has been the position of this administration since day one.
Let me tell you, this is what she's saying right here is 100% correct. This absolutely 100% correct. There should be no place for anybody to come here and be here illegally and be protected by the goddamn politicians in a city, in a sanctuary city, mayor, governor, anybody. The police, even though I would imagine they can't be forced to cooperate with the feds, that shit needs to be changed by legislation. That absolutely needs to be changed by legislation, especially when it comes to immigration. And you know what? The Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Senate, and the leader of the Senate, they should get together and they should craft a bill changing that part of the law that says the state's police don't have to cooperate with the feds. How stupid is that? I mean, it's the stupidest shit, man. Isn't that the same thing that helped bring down 9/11 when the CIA and the FBI were withholding information from each other based on some stupid fucking rules, right? Yeah, it's stupid. Now, you can't say that, just when the feds make some shit up, the state should drop everything. But for specific issues, they could codify into law that if we're coming after illegals and you arrest one of them motherfuckers, right? We should be able to go into the jails, go into the courtrooms where it's safe and it's protected, and deliver whatever we need to deliver to the law enforcement to say we got to retain on this person, and then put that person into immigration custody. Or whatever is worse, because sometimes they just gave a guy over back to the civil authorities because the crime that he committed, they weren't going to let him get away with just being deported. They want the guy to be punished for the crime that he committed. So those things should be negotiable. Those things should be a handshake between the feds and the local police forces to get crime off the street and out of our cities. And yes, get people who are here illegally, out of here, especially if they commit crime. If they don't commit crime, they just let ICE do their business, especially for those people who you might love and all that. But if they're undocumented, if they're out of compliance, they're subject to deportation. And I know all you American liberals and all that heartstring shit, I can dig it. I really can. But if we're out of compliance as regular citizens with some of the laws, we got to face the consequences. Just consequences with your actions, and you just can't just heartfelt them away. You just can't do that, right? So anyway, on the immigration issue, the Republicans are 100% right on that, in getting illegals out of the country. And I don't understand. The only reason why there's an argument is because they hate Trump, because they didn't say shit when Obama was doing.
As for the timing, we will reevaluate and reassess and make further decisions after this 30-day period is up. But within these 30 days, our entire focus is making sure that this is the most efficient operation possible, and that we are removing as many criminals from the streets, and we are cleaning up DC as best as we can, and working with the Metropolitan Police Department to do that. I know the mayor just spoke several minutes ago. I was watching her on television, and she said that an increase in law enforcement officers on the streets will be helpful to deter crime in this city. And we look forward to working with these brave men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department to remove criminals off of our streets and to keep law-abiding citizens in the district safe.
Right. See, the only black people who think this is bad are the race baiters that don't even live in the city. Right? Now, here's the only cautionary tale that I would agree, because we have memories. We remember the push to get crime off the street called the 94 crime bill. And that they slung a broad net and put not only guilty people in jail, they put them in for extreme mandatory sentences, and they put the people who might have been caught in that net, innocent or otherwise, in jail too. Right? I mean, people are, that whole notion of marijuana versus, not marijuana, but cocaine versus crack. People are still being punished over that, getting life sentences for shit that people used to walk away from. If this turns into that, and it's a slippery slope, that's what I'd be looking for. But, if you're a black person living in the worst parts of DC, and now you might have a chance to raise your kids without gunfire all around them every day, without people doing just complete dumb shit on your property and your cars and all of that kind of stuff. The place being clean, finding shelters for the homeless, especially the men. Male homelessness, they really don't have much for the male homelessness, right? You can't, I know a lot of people don't want to go in those places, but you still don't have the right to camp out anywhere you want to, no matter what your circumstance is. So it's a slippery slope in terms of, can you do these things with compassion? You want to be, but getting people to do what they need to do when they don't want to do it, you can't always make that shit look sweet. It's not going to always be pretty. So if this is the capital of the United States. You go to Paris, you go to all these other capitals of countries and shit like that. Some of those places are beautiful everywhere. I mean, most of the places, right? You should be able to just be able to breathe the clean air and watch, nice monuments and stuff and walk without worry. Other than some natural shit that happens once in a while. But the truth of the matter is, DC is almost the absolute opposite. And as Black people, we had an opportunity to make Chocolate City into a Mecca. Instead, we put blue Democrat bullshit in there, soft on crime, soft on this, soft on that, laws that protect the worst of the criminals. Now, I don't necessarily agree with charging teenagers as adults. It has to depend on the crime. But some of these things are as egregious as hell. Just saying, I'm going to hold you to 21. I don't know if you can be rehabbed in that short period of time. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know. But we have to look at that. But they can't go free. Even if they can't be charged as adults, they can't go free. You can't just put people back out on the street when they commit crimes. It's just crazy.
Josh.
Thank you. The president weighed in on Jay Powell again today. You might have seen. He said that he's considering allowing a major lawsuit against Powell to proceed because of the, quote, horrible and grossly incompetent job he has done. Can you tell us about that? What lawsuit is he talking about?
He's considering a lawsuit, and I won't speak on it any further. I will allow the president to do that himself.
Is it fair to say the administration is considering suing the Fed chair over this renovation?
That's what the president is saying.
Had discussions with anyone about this, or is this just like how advanced is this right now?
At this moment in time, the president is considering a lawsuit against the Fed, and I will leave it to him to comment further on it.
Well, listen, here's one that there's two parts to this. One, I think the president is correct in knowing that the Fed chair is withholding lowering interest rates, which is harming everybody. The United States ability to reduce the cost of their debt, the ability for people to get loans for homes and for companies to borrow money. That the Fed is just doing it because he hates Trump. That's and it's clear and it's obvious now. And Trump's problem is that when you, as a leader, when you come up against a guy who's trying to prove a point because he has the power to do it, there's a way to approach that person, right? When you approach some old fucking guy like this dude who's the Fed chair, the Fed chairs are the biggest prima donna, lying, crooked people on the face of the earth. And they have too much power to begin with. The Fed in and itself is a legal operation, if you think about it. And so this guy has no incentive to do anything that Trump says, and trying to beat him up and all that kind of stuff is not a good way to try to get him to do what he needs to do. The appeal you make to a man like that is, listen, man, I don't care how you feel about me, right? And it don't even have to be in public. I don't care how you feel about me. At some point, your belief in the job that you're supposed to do should take over, right? It's kind of akin to those Democrats who left Texas in order to make a quorum, to hold a quorum. First of all, how can that possibly be? Can you imagine that every time we get a vote that one side doesn't agree with it, all those people walk out so you can't vote and nobody could do nothing about it? We can't have, when you lose an election, you goddamn lose an election. The people, what Texas is doing is absolutely legal. There's nothing illegal. They just don't like it, right? So now we're going to create a precedent that, well, they did it before, by the way, and they had to come back and face the music. But if you can't get punished, you were elected to do a job. And one of the things is, if you lose, you got to take the consequences for losing. You can't just leave the state and create chaos because you call that fighting back. That's crazy. So that's what the Fed chair is doing. That's what Judge Boasberg was doing, trying to tell a plane to turn around just because you're some fucking judge. That's crazy. You're trying to impact foreign policy. All of that stuff, man. He got burned out. He got slammed down just recently. But President Trump handled this guy the wrong way. They're both probably silent generation dudes, arrogant, pricks, pretty much. And they don't, if they don't have to back down, they just dig in. The guy's just completely dug in, and he'll let the country burn before he bends his will to President Trump. And so when you get guys like that, lawsuit is I guess if that's your way, but there's no way to run the government, right? There's no way to get what you want out of people by, calling them everything but a child of God in public. It's crazy. Trump wouldn't take that from people. He would absolutely dig in no matter whether he was right or wrong. So I mean, this is a big mistake. There's no telling that even if he used honey instead of a stick, that this guy would have budged, because Trump derangement syndrome should be in the medical journals, because it's absolutely people who are like that, who lose credibility just because they don't like the person, and it has nothing to do with what he's doing. And even if some of those things are beneficial for the whole country. So if interest rates were lowered, everything that we hold dear, not only on Wall Street, but Main Street, would absolutely explode upward. And everybody knows it. It would be such a huge win for the Trump administration. And this guy refuses to give it to him. And it's as simple as that. Just like those Texas bastards who left the state because they didn't want to give the governor the win that he deserved by a vote.
Tamara,
we talked about, yesterday we talked about the NVIDIA chips deal the president has struck as well, the AMD, the 15% stake will go to the government. Do you have any detail on how that came about? The president said he asked for 20% from NVIDIA. Did he make the same 20% ask to AMD, and or is this something the administration is looking to do with other either chips or products, going forward? Is this a model it wants to build on?
Well, look, right now it stands with these two companies. Perhaps it could expand in the future to other companies. I think it's a creative idea and solution. The legality of it, the mechanics of it is still being ironed out by the Department of Commerce, and I would defer you to them for any further details on how it will actually be implemented. But again, this was another idea of the president and his brain trust on his trade team to try to, get good deals for the American people and the American taxpayer.
The report that China is discouraging use of the H20 to some companies. Since this, we're reporting that overnight there was private guidance sent to companies not banning the chip, but urging them to steer away from it. I wonder if you have any response to that.
I haven't read the report. I will, and we'll get you a comment on it. Tamara.
Thank you. Last week, the meeting with Putin was sort of described potentially as an opportunity for a deal. Now it's a feeling out. Has there been a shift in expectations within the White House, or an effort to temper expectations about what success looks like for this meeting?
I mean, look, I think both can be true, right? The president has always said he wants a peace deal. He wants to see this war come to an end. But this bilateral meeting is a bilateral meeting between one party in this two-party war, right? You need both countries to agree to a deal. The president is accepting this bilateral meeting with Putin on Friday, and I will let him speak further to it after it concludes about how he felt it went.
And also, completely unrelated to specifics about how homeless people will be dealt with, where they would be moved to? What does this look like?
I do, yes. And it's an important question. So thank you for raising it. The Metropolitan Police Department, with the support of the new federal agencies who have been surging on the streets of the District of Columbia, are going to enforce the laws that are already on the books here in Washington, D.C. For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So D.C. Code 22-1307 and D.C. Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services. And if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals and homeless encampments as well.
That's so good. I mentioned this already. Almost probably every city has laws against loitering and setting up tent cities. And these are like laws that don't get enforced. Definitely, like, we can't just say it's just the blue states. I would imagine there's homelessness in other places, even under red state control. But it's not as pervasive as it is in some of the biggest blue cities because they look at it as a so-called victimless crime. So they're not going to really enforce it. And the worst part is they don't have any place to put these people, especially homeless men. Right. So as part of this thing, and she didn't say this, do you have enough places, enough facilities to actually house homeless people, especially men? It's usually women with children and men not allowed. But we're and so that part of this question is not being answered. Now, look, the part for if they refuse to go, which a lot of them will, you're going to lock them up. And the Supreme Court, I believe, already said that they criminalize homelessness, especially if you don't do the alternatives, right? But the truth of the matter is a lot of these shelters are bad. A lot of these places are dangerous and all of that kind of stuff. And that could be an excuse because they don't want to be controlled that way. But the truth of the matter is setting up a tent on property that doesn't belong to you, right, is also equally not your right. It's not your right to do it, So it's that quandary that we're in. But if this is the capital and you want people, remember now when Los Angeles had those dignitaries coming through because they wanted to, kiss and tell with some of the guys from, I think, China or whoever it was. And also on Skid Row, in a matter of weeks, Gavin Newsom and those guys had the whole place cleaned out, shit off the streets, all that stuff was cleaned out as if it and before the week was out, when it was all over, that shit was right back there, and they didn't enforce anything. They just wanted to let it go right back to shit. Do you hear what I'm saying? Blue states, blue enforcement is a detriment to American living. And it has been for decades. So it's time to change all that. Look at Chicago. They have what's that group, Turn Chicago Red, that's growing and growing because the guy who's in charge of Chicago he's a race trader, if you ask me. So let Karoline go back to the homeless. If she's finished with that, let her keep going. But it's a sad commentary, if you ask me.
So we will be using these regulations and code that already exists to clean up our streets. And we've already had great success. Not many of you picked up on this, but the United States Park Police has actually done remarkable work in terms of removing homeless encampments from the city. Since the president signed this executive order in March, 70 homeless encampments have been removed by the U.S. Park Police. There are only 2 homeless encampments remaining in DC federal parks under the National Park Service's jurisdiction. And the removal of those 2 remaining camps is scheduled for this week. So the U.S. Park Police will be leading this effort alongside MPD.
Just very quickly, he had talked in one of his social media posts about moving them very far outside of the city. Is that off?
No, it's not off. We're exploring how we could do that. But again, homeless shelters, offered addiction and mental health services, or jail if they refuse are the options on the table right now. And we'll continue to explore that option.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Karoline. President Zelensky said moments ago that he thinks Russia is preparing for a new offensive on at least 3 different areas of the front line. Is this something that you could confirm based on U.S. intelligence? And if the president sees that Putin is indeed planning major new offensive or moving troops, would he call off the meeting on Friday?
I'm not in a position to confirm or deny or comment on that intel at this time. Monica.
Thanks, Caroline. My question involves Russiagate. A whistleblower alleges that then Congressman Adam Schiff approved leaking classified information to smear President Trump's image during the Russiagate scandal. Does the president plan to investigate Adam Schiff, and what would accountability look like if more information confirms this report?
The president has already said he wants to see Adam Schiff held accountable for the countless lies he told the American people in relation to the Russiagate scandal. I brought Tulsi Gabbard out to this podium to talk to you about all of that. And this administration is taking accountability very seriously. As for this new FBI whistleblower report, I understand Kash Patel last night declassified a 302 FBI document showing that a whistleblower who is a Democrat, a career intelligence officer who worked for Democrats on the House Intel Committee for more than a decade, repeatedly warned the FBI in 2017 that then Rep. Adam Schiff had approved leaking classified information to smear then President Donald Trump over the Russiagate scandal. This is obviously a bombshell whistleblower report.
You know what, man? I'm stopping this shit a lot, and it's usually I let her just speak, but it's a lot more in here than I anticipated. It's a lot more than I anticipated. I'm going a little longer. The problem with the Republicans and this whole shit, let's hold people accountable, is there's no perp walks. There's no perp walks for the Epsteins. There's no perp walks for the people who set up the whole Russian gate in the first place. This is an extension of that. They've been after Schiff for 10 years now, right? So this letter, this little segment of this whistleblower is going to change it. Where's the indictments? Where are the indictments? The only time I saw anybody get arrested is the black woman in New Jersey who bumped into an ICE agent, as if he was like a petulant little kid who couldn't handle a bumping, right? She was out of line. But she's the only one who's been indicted, which is like, to me, some minor bullshit, right? Freed the mayor, he did pretty much the same thing. So I'm just saying, where's the perp walks for all of these criminals? It's just all bullshit, man. I'm tired of, like Letitia James. There's people who do content creators who put bullshit clickbait titles to their thing saying, oh, we got her now. She's exposed now. She's going to get indicted now. And they say the same bullshit to get money, right? So I stopped clicking on them. Until we indict her, everything else say about Letitia James is also bullshit. What about the mortgage fraud? Was it mortgage fraud or not? It's just all bullshit, man. Y'all got to go ahead and bite the apple. If y'all think somebody's a criminal, indict them and let's see them go to court. Put what y'all say on the line. It's time. Stop talking about it.
Hopefully more people in this room will cover it as such. And I have a quote from the FBI director for all of you. He has said this: for years, certain officials used their positions to selectively leak classified information to shape political narratives. It was all done with one purpose: to weaponize intelligence and law enforcement for political gain. Those abuses eroded public trust in our institutions. The FBI will now lead the charge with our partners at DOJ, and Congress will have the chance to uncover how political power may have been weaponized and to restore accountability.
Oh, this is all bullshit, Karoline. Who's going to jail? If you're going to sit these assholes in front of Congress and have one of those stupid hearings that y'all have, and whether I don't even know if they're going to be under oath, and nobody goes to jail no matter what they say. It's just bullshit, man. You know, you either got something on these guys or you don't. If you want to put a black guy in jail, we don't go through all this bullshit. You go, you put the indictment out there and you put him in front of a judge, whether he has a good lawyer or not, and you'll convict the fucking guy for 100 years. So this guy's shift. If he's actually guilty of something, get a grand jury and indict him. Just indict him. This is all bullshit, man.
That's what the administration is focused on, and hopefully we'll see some more media reports on this whistleblower allegation. If this were reversed, if this were allegations against the president or any of these cabinet officials, I'm sure everyone in this room would cover it as such. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. After yesterday's action to federalize the DC police, is the president still interested in working with Congress to end the Home Rule Act, something he's talked about in the past? Senator Mike Lee has a bill on it. Is that something he's still interested in?
The president is very much still interested in working with Congress to address many of the issues that have plagued Washington, D.C., such as the cashless bail policy, which has been a complete disaster for the city. Juvenile delinquency is another major problem in the city that Congress can address. So I know Congress is on recess right now. When they get back to work to Washington, this president looks forward to having these conversations with our friends on Capitol Hill so we can work with them to make D.C. safe and beautiful again. And again, we encourage Democrats to join us in this effort. Perhaps their approval ratings would move up a little bit if they did. I saw a new poll today. Democrat approval rating is at an all-time low, 32%. If they could just stand by the basic notion of law and order, perhaps they would see that tick up.
Well, let me also say that part of this whole thing with juveniles is, arrest and put the ones who are bad apples away is, and even if it's just juvenile court for a few years. But you got to bring back the manpower programs. You got to bring back the programs for a little bit of money where these guys can get jobs and places to go during their leisure time, like in the summers. Get them, we used to, just dream for the day where we can get a job, get permission at 14 years old to be able to get a job, to be able to coalesce and do things around the cities, right? We used to clean parks. That was our job for the summer. Then we get a bus, we go down on a bus with a counselor, and they paid us a certain amount of money. But you know what it did? It filled our time with something productive. You got to fill kids' time with, everybody who's in this administration that have anything to do with children should read The Lord of the Flies as a mandatory reading, right? If you leave kids rudderless with nothing but leisure time, they are going to default to fuckery. That's what they're going to do. And that's not just black kids, that's all kids. They gotta be stimulated to do things that are worthwhile and that are sanctioned and actually paid for. That probably would be a good investment for taxpayers' money, and it wouldn't be that much. Not with the money we're throwing around everywhere else, killing people in wars, genocides in Israel, all that kind of stuff. Hey, just how about pull back $1 billion of that or two and actually invest it into our youth in programs that are controlled and monitored. So these kids get summer jobs. They get really things that'll get them busy, dreaming about the future, as opposed to coalescing in gangs with rudderless intentions and evil intentions. How about that be a part of the program?
A bit, and we welcome them to do that. Dasha.
Thanks, Caroline. President Trump yesterday at this podium indicated this, so has NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, that in order for peace to happen, it is very likely that Ukraine will have to cede some land to Russia. Zelensky has repeatedly said no land for peace. That's not going to happen. Has this administration communicated to Zelensky that he's going to have to change that position?
Look, I appreciate your asking that question in a different way than your colleague Michael in the back. I don't want to get into the details of these negotiations and these discussions that have taken place out of respect for where we are right now. And I'll let the president speak on it further if he wishes to.
More about Israel. Sure. I know the president has had a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu recently. Netanyahu is planning to seize the remainder of Gaza City. What is the administration's position on this move by Israel's government?
Look, this is an incredibly complex and complicated war. that, again, was inherited by this president, by his predecessor, Joe Biden. October 7th was one of the worst days in history. We saw innocent people slaughtered, murdered, kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. This administration has taken extensive time and effort and resources since Inauguration Day in January to end this conflict. We have given many flexible arrangements backed by Israel to Hamas, and unfortunately, Hamas has never agreed. Looking ahead, I will let the president speak on where he sees this going, but this is, of course, an incredibly complex and complicated situation. The administration has made our goal clear. We want to see this conflict end. We want to see the hostages released, and we've tried. The president and his national security team have given extensive effort and time to doing that.
With how Israel has used those resources and the assistance that you've provided?
Look, I'll let the president speak on the further actions that Israel may or may not be taking. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Karoline. Thank you. The Kremlin is expressing.
I'm purposely passing on the Israel discussion. I think it's a loss for us based on humanity. Everything else is bullshit. The lie is even a lie calling it a war. Okay. October 7th was, a horrible thing, but how much retribution should you get? How much do you really get? That makes sense, right? And the rest of it is a lie. Netanyahu wants to eliminate every last Palestinian he can see, right? So that's his thing, right? That's why he's been, I guess, indicted as a war criminal, I believe, by the courts, the world court that we're trying to ignore, the ICCC or some shit like that nobody really wants to talk about, that he pretty much is has to stay in Israel or in the United States, but he ain't free to just go anywhere. They pick his ass up. So anyway, listen, I said I wasn't going to say anything, but it's a bad look for the world, what's going on in Gaza. Whether you like Palestinians or not, it's a bad look for the world. And that kind of shit shouldn't be going on right now. Exterminations of people should not be going on, especially not with blood on American weapons.
Interest that Friday's meeting will move beyond just terms to end the war into improving bilateral relations. There's talk over how they're interested in potentially restoring direct flights between Russia and the United States. Is President Trump open to those kind of peripheral conversations, or is this directly focused on ending the war in Ukraine?
I think this conversation on Friday is focused on ending the war in Ukraine as far as the president's perspective goes. Those conversations, I think the president is interested in having, but his main priority right now is ending this war and to stop the killing that has gone on for far too long. You're welcome.
Karoline.
In the back, go ahead.
Yeah, two questions on the economy. So first, we've had small businesses tell us that it's not foreign exporters who are eating the tariffs, it's them. And they've held off on raising prices, but soon they're going to have to raise prices. What is the White House's message to them?
The White House's message to our small business owners across the country is you have never had a better ally or friend or supporter in this White House than President Donald Trump, who is a businessman himself, who understands your concerns and who wants to restore wealth back to our country through the powerful use of tariffs. And that's what he's focused on doing, while simultaneously driving down costs. You have to remember, we are 6 months into this administration, and we had a president who had no business experience, had no idea what he was doing, and who funneled billions of wasteful spending dollars into our economy, which created the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now this president is focused on tackling inflation, deregulating, cutting costs, cutting red tape to make it easier for small business owners to thrive. And again, the economic indicators show that we are moving in the right direction. In January, when this president showed up to the White House, the 6-month annualized core inflation rate was 3.7%. Today, 6 months later, the 6-month annualized core inflation rate is 2.4%. So we are trending in the right direction. Moving forward, since President Trump took office, for another 6 months, inflation will be tracking at 1.9% at this trajectory. You look at grocery prices, they fell, energy prices fell, fuel oil fell, ship fares fell, propane fell, butter, margarine, eggs, non-prescription drugs. You go through the list of items that are falling. And then I would also point to that report this morning showing that small business optimism has reached a 5-month high. So look, we inherited an economic mess from the previous administration. But this administration is focused on fixing it every day. And part of that is signing the largest tax cuts into law to put more money back into the pockets of these small business owners.
Just on the BLS, they collect the inflation data. Obviously, if the jobs data is not reliable, should Americans trust the inflation data?
Well, look, the jobs data has had massive revisions. We want to ensure that all of the data, the inflation data, the jobs data, any data point that is coming out of the BLS is trustworthy and is accurate, which is why the president has restored new leadership at the BLS. Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. Gavin Newsom has said that California is going to sue in response to the government's demand for $1 billion from UCLA over the DOJ's anti-Semitism findings. Newsom has called this extortion and ransom. So I'm wondering what the White House's response is to Newsom on UCLA.
Bring it on, Gavin. This administration is well within its legal right to do this, and we want to ensure that our colleges and our universities are respecting the First Amendment rights and the religious liberties of students on their campuses, and UCLA has failed to do that. And I have a whole list of examples that I will forward to Gavin Newsom's press office if he hasn't seen them himself. Brett.
Karoline. Thanks, Caroline. What was the reason that President Trump chose to move on from Billy Long as IRS commissioner?
Look, I think the president wants to see Billy Long as the ambassador to Iceland. As you know, that is where he will be headed. And the president loves Billy Long, and he thinks that he can serve the administration well in this position. For now, Secretary Scott Bessent will be the acting IRS commissioner.
Timeline for announcing a new pick?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, Ed, go ahead, but then in the back. Yes.
Go in the back first.
Okay, sure.
Thanks, Caroline. One foreign policy and then one domestic question, if I may. There are roughly 30,000 children from Ukraine who have reportedly been abducted and are kind of dispersed around Russia. They've been showing up on these websites for adoption. Is their return a red line for the president in any deal ending the war?
The administration is aware of these reports. I don't want to set red lines for the president on his behalf from this podium. However, the president did encourage Ukraine and Russia to speak directly to one another in terms of these humanitarian issues. And we have seen progress. You have seen prisoners of war swapped between these two countries as a result of these direct talks, as well as children. And that remains a concern, but it's one that Russia and Ukraine need to iron out together, which is why this president has encouraged them to speak.
And then if I can,
sure.
The DC action real quick. The president said yesterday that this is a model federalizing the National Guard that could be used to combat really high rates of crime in other cities like Chicago, LA, Baltimore. What sort of authority would he have to deploy forces like that absent the Home Rule Act?
Look, the president is speaking about what he'd like to see take place in other cities around the country. Right now, this administration is focused on making DC safe and beautiful again. When the time comes, we'll talk about that. But I will note that the president wants to see all of our nation's cities be safe. But I think starting with our nation's capital is a great place to begin, and it should serve as a model for the rest of the country. Ed.
Just to bind up a few of the DC things, because a lot of them have been asked, but in talking with Congress about potential changes to home rule and whatever else, would he also push the House to finally pass DC's budget so that it has access to all that money that it does need for policing, for schools, and for other services here in the city?
Yes, and as you know, he has done that. He put out a statement calling on the House to take up the Senate's legislation, and he stands by that position.
Let me take you back to something from last month. You guys announced the president was diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency after his legs were seen swelling. How's he being treated for that? And while you were upfront about those health issues, curious if the White House would be willing to let us speak with his physician directly about those health issues. I know there were a lot of concerns about the last White House not making the physician available. Would the physician be available in this case?
I don't want to make that commitment on behalf of the physician, but it's certainly something we can look into and explore out of the effort of transparency, because unlike the previous White House, there is nothing to hide. You guys see this president working around the clock, literally 24/7, all of the time, and I will be happy to look into that request.
least get an update on how he's being treated for the swelling legs and for the hands and the other issues?
Look, you see the president every day. He's moving, he's working, he's continuing. There have been no adjustments made to his lifestyle.
Hey, Karoline, I have two questions, one on DC, but on the Putin meeting on Friday, does the president plan to meet with Putin one-on-one?
Yes, that's part of the plan. And as for the other mechanics and logistics, I will let our team speak to that when they're ironed out.
And on what's happening in DC with the federal takeover, what we've heard from the mayor and the police chief is that their understanding is there has been no change in the leadership structure. In the White House's view, who is in charge of the MPD right now?
If you read the executive order, it will tell you the leadership structure is as follows. We plan to work with the Metropolitan Police Department, but ultimately the chain of command is as such. The President of the United States, the Attorney General of the United States, our DEA Administrator, Terry Cole, who is now serving ahead of the Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department. They will be working together. Nope, Terry Cole, as you heard from this briefing room yesterday, is in charge of the Metropolitan Police Department, and he's working with the Chief to ensure that law enforcement officers are allowed to do their jobs in this city.
Karoline?
Yeah, thanks, Karoline. I know you said earlier the hope is to maintain monthly job reports, but the president's new nominee for BLS Commissioner E.J. Antoni recently told Fox Business that the BLS should suspend issuing monthly job reports and only issue quarterly reports until the jobs data methodology is corrected. So does the president disagree with that assessment that his nominee is said there, or suspending these monthly job reports a real option?
I think he floated the idea of possibly suspending until they can get the data and the methodology in order. And this president wants to ensure that the BLS, again, is putting out.
Actually, that's a great suggestion. You shouldn't start. If you don't have the data that you're comfortable, the way you're getting the data, and you don't think it's really accurate, they shouldn't put out a report until they're ready. But it shouldn't last more than one quarter. And if that means that part of your quarter is already gone, so you got to have it. If you don't have it now, you have to have it before the end of September, which is the end of the government's fiscal year, if I believe.
Accurate and honest data that the American people can trust. Since you brought up the new commissioner, he holds a master's and doctor's degree in economics from Northern Illinois University. He's the chief economist in the Heritage Foundation's Center for the Federal Budget. And in addition to his work at Heritage, he has multiple other roles. He's been widely renowned for his work on economic issues. He's been called before Congress to testify as an economic expert. So he's a qualified individual, and the president trusts him to lead this important department. Take a couple more questions. Sure, go ahead.
Given that the administration now has jurisdiction over MPD, can we expect, does that mean like personnel changes, hiring, firing? Can we expect leadership changes internally in the Metropolitan Police
Well,
Department?
I just walked through what the leadership structure looks like right now.
Within the uniformed police department, right? I mean, does that mean that the Attorney General, others kind of have the ability to make those personnel decisions?
I would imagine it means they have the ability. As for any changes, I'm not tracking any. Again, we look forward to working alongside the Metropolitan Police Department. And we did that last night successfully, and we hope we could do that for the next 29 nights. Go ahead.
Karoline,
Yes.
So there are reports that ICE agents detained a 15-year-old student with disabilities outside an LA high school, even leaving bullets on the sidewalk. How does the Trump administration plan to ensure parents that their children can return to school without fear of being wrongfully detained or endangered by federal agents?
Where'd you see that report? Okay, well, I'll have to look into the veracity of that report. I read the LA Times almost every single day, and they are notorious for misleading the public. I'm sure there's more to that story than the way that you just characterized it. This administration wants to ensure that all school children across the country in every city from Los Angeles to DC can go to school safely. And that's part of this administration's effort to federalize the National Guard in Washington, to ensure that ICE is removing child predators. I just read you a list of a handful, just a handful of the hundreds of thousands of child predators that this administration is removing off of the streets of Los Angeles and every other community across this country, because we want to ensure this is a country where American school children can be safe, where they can prosper, and where they are not threatened by violent criminals, whether they are illegal or whether they are American citizen homegrown criminals, as this president calls them. So I will gladly go check on that report, and I'll get you the facts. Thank you, Karoline.
Oh, it was a pretty good. I mean, that's longer than I expected. I didn't mean to be rattling off the jibs. I usually don't talk as much. during these things. But she said a lot in this press conference, and it was informative. Some things I agree with, some things I didn't. So there you have it. Karoline Leavitt, probably one of the best press conference spokesmen, in recent memory. Anyway, our pain, marriage, politics, and sports. Leave your comments in below, whether you agree or not. I might even have to go back through this and put timestamps because I stopped it so much. Anyway, I'll talk to you on the next one.